Hi, good afternoon everyone, or good morning, depending on where in the world you are. Welcome to the second session of the Spring 2026 Sunoikis Digital Classics program. This semester we have a program on digital approaches to cultural heritage, and we had a general introduction to the topic last week, and this week we've got the first of a few geodata themed sessions. We're in particular talking about collaborative cultural heritage geodata. There's other kinds of cultural heritage data being worked on collaboratively and in sort of linked open data ways in the things we're talking about this week, but geodata is the sort of overarching theme across it all. If you're watching us live, which I hope some people are, you can use the live chat feature in YouTube, which is usually to the right of the video or underneath the video if you've got it in large mode, and you can use the live chat to say hi. So please leave a note, let us know where you are, who you are, where you're watching from. You can also use it to make comments and ask questions as we go, and we'll have some time for discussion at the end, and we'll respond to some of your questions in that part. So we'll start with an hour or so of presentations across this, with some introduction to some of the main themes and to linked open data in general, and then an introduction to two projects in particular. And I'll very briefly just sort of introduce who everybody is, and then we'll move on. So I'm Gabri Badar. I'm one of the co-organisers of this program. I work at the University of London in Digital Classics. My colleague Chiara Palladino, who also works in Digital Classics at the University of Durham, is the co-organiser of this. So we're sort of keeping an eye on the whole program. Anna Clara Maniero Azzolini, who's a PhD student at the University of London, who has interests that overlap in many ways with what we're talking about across this semester as a whole, and this week in particular. Is also joining us to take part in the discussion. But the three presenters for today are in the order in which they're going to present, and you can see them on the screen, are Anne Chen, Emily Helm, and Sebastian Heath. And I will also let them all introduce themselves briefly at the beginning of their session, so I don't have to worry about making mistakes with titles or job descriptions or locations, etc. But I believe Anne is kicking us off, so I'll hand over to you.
Hi, and thanks so much to Gabby for the introduction. I'm Anne Chen. I am an assistant professor at Bard College in New York. Assistant professor of art history and what we call at Bard experimental humanities, which is a broader capture than just digital humanities, so intersection of people and technology broadly. I have the great honor of kind of kicking us off with a little bit of background about one of the themes that will run through this discussion, providing some context for what we mean by linked open data, and then introducing the platforms that will run through this discussion, Wikidata and Wikipedia. And I will be talking about how our team, the IDEA team that Emily and I represent, the International Digital Duri Europos Archive, is trying to use linked open data methods and Wikidata in particular as kind of a platform for opening our professional networks to work more closely with colleagues that are globally situated, that speak different languages, in order to kind of share in the stewardship of important cultural heritage sites that have a long history of excavation and research that is tied to foreign institutions. So with that, I will do a little bit of explaining about what I mean by linked open data. So linked open data is best understood, I guess, really as a group of methods. It's not a singular way of doing things, but it's a method for publishing structured data so that it can be interlinked and become more useful through queries across complementary, maybe contextually related, but differently curated data sets. So it's moving beyond a simple text-based record to create a machine-readable web of knowledge so that computers can kind of aid in the discovery of relevant information across the web. The foundation of this system is what we call a URI, or a Uniform Resource Identifier. And that's essentially, you can think of that as a stable, permanent web address that identifies a unique thing. So in this case, we're thinking of like a person, a place, a concept. And because that URI is persistent and should never move, it provides then a reliable anchor for information on the internet. So you can map lots of complexity to a single place, and the computer can help you to then work across vagaries or ambiguities in the larger data ecosystem. So in order to facilitate this, essentially there is a foundational concept. So the idea that facts or interpretations can be kind of sliced up into three-part elemental components that can be kind of strung together using these URIs. So a lot of times people explain it as a subject, predicate, and object that that expresses a relationship between various things or concepts. So URIs can essentially function as a language agnostic code that can act as a universal stand-in for a concept. So imagine if a record for each part of a statement, this subject, predicate, object statement, lives on the internet in a stable place that never moves and is assigned a language agnostic code instead of, a human readable label. The equivalent translation for the concept in each world language can be mapped to the language agnostic code. And this is what can ultimately enable multilinguistic search. One of the things that our project is doing, and that I'll try to tease out, is that we've recognized that this same principle can also be used to kind of bridge across different naming traditions, different transliterations for the same place, or even different epistemic traditions related to the interpretation or the local understanding, say, of a particular place. So what I'm showing you on the screen here, I've broken up this subject, predicate, object statement that demonstrates the idea that you can kind of string together URIs to express a relationship between things. If you see the little Wikidata URIs or web addresses that are in the blue boxes over top of the little bubbles, you'll see that at the end part of the URI, there is a Q number. And that Q number is what I'm talking about as a language agnostic code. So the Q number is just a randomly generated number that stands in for a particular person, place, thing, event that is mapped to that particular code. Same thing with a relationship. The relationship number gets a P number, and that becomes a language agnostic code that stands in for the idea of the relationship that you're trying to express. And then you're pointing to another language agnostic code. This is another Q number or a value, so like a numerical value, like a geocoordinate or a measurement could also go in this value space. So the idea is that then each world language could map their different way of calling a particular thing to the language agnostic Q number, and that's how the multilingual search works. So just to show you an example of how this works in practice, the particular photograph that I'm showing you here is assigned a language agnostic Q number, and then we have an Arabic language label for that particular photograph, and a French language label, as well as an English language label. They're all mapped to the language agnostic code. The concept of something being depicted in that photograph can be also expressed as a language agnostic P number with different translations mapped to that. And then finally, we're saying that it actually depicts a particular place. And in this case, the particular place is known in the scholarship variously in English as the Palmyrene Gate, the Palmyra Gate, sometimes the Main Gate, Porta Praetoria. And then in the local tradition, there are Arabic transliterations of those names that could be useful, but we've also found that the local community tends to refer to the gate as Bab al-Hawa, which means gate of the winds, and is kind of coming from a different epistemic reference point. We don't know what the Romans would have actually called this gate, so it's any of these ways of referring to the gate actually give us information about it. On the one hand, the scholarly names are telling us something about how this gate functions in terms of a map of the Roman Empire and connections between Roman cities. In the local tradition, it's telling us something about maybe an embodied experience of actually interacting with the gate. And using this three-part statement, we can provide searchability for the photograph according to any of these various naming traditions. So the same concept then applies for any kind of statement that you might want to make about cultural heritage data. So I've given you a couple of examples here. So a statue made from material bronze, we can communicate that information language agnostically. Then I've also showed you an example of an inscription to say that it's possible to express that a particular inscription has a particular measurement and point to a value. We can also say, this inscription is written in ancient Greek, and all of this information can become expressed in a language agnostic fashion that makes it more accessible, which in our case is really important for better sharing well-referenced information with Arabic speakers that have been kind of sidelined from research because of the kind of trajectory of the history of excavation at the particular site that we're dealing with, where foreign-led excavations essentially mean that publications then came out in languages that favored the sponsoring institutions. So a lot of the information from the site that we're dealing with is exclusively available in English and French. The other thing that I should say about this three-part statement that is really important is that one of these little granular statements can be anchored to a particular bibliographic citation. So this is why it's important, what I'm showing you with the what I'm calling pseudo statements here, the statements about the inscription. We can show that we're actually pulling this information from a particular resource, and this can be a print resource or it can be an online resource. And so this is a way of really anchoring the validity and the sourcing of the information that is going into what I will introduce as a knowledge graph in just a moment. So zooming out for a moment, the cultural heritage sector, you can essentially have billions of these three-part statements that form a web of data that is kind of expressing relationships among people, places, things. And for our purposes, we should be thinking in cultural heritage contexts about both artifacts, but also the archival documents that document say the discovery of artifacts or the uncovering of an archaeological site, things like that. Events and bibliography are also a part of this network of relationships. And so the machine readability that is built into this system allows computers to kind of more accurately understand content that would otherwise trip up keyword searching or create ambiguity for a user. So for instance, an example that I like to use from Dura is imagine that you have a photograph that is labeled Temple of Bel, and that's actually what we have in the center of the little demonstration network graph that I've given you here. And at the nearby site of Palmyra, there is also a temple of Bel, and frequently keyword searching will get tripped up by the ambiguity of the shared name between two very different temples at two different sites that look somewhat different, but unless you're a specialist, you really might not understand that that the photograph that I'm referring to is at Dura and the other one at Palmyra. So when you're pointing to these language agnostic codes, you are essentially helping the computer to understand the differentiation, and that your particular photograph is actually related to a specific temple at one site and not the other. So digging into this bigger picture a little bit, say for instance that you've got photographs in two different repositories that are labeled using different scholarly traditions. The one that is labeled as Temple of Bel at one, and Temple of Palmyrene Gods. It's the same building, but it is referred to by a different scholarly name in a different repository. If both of those records in two separate repositories are pointing to the same Pleiades anchor, or another kind of stable URI in the linked open data ecosystem, then you're making it clear to through machine readability that in fact these two different photographs that have been cataloged in different languages that are using different naming traditions actually both refer to the same place. So when data managers are reusing shared URIs, they're adding to this web of relationships among data curated by different institutions and different repositories. The shared URIs become kind of intersection points between different data sets, and they make it clearer to both machines and humans that information in these different repositories and curated in different languages, maybe using different transliterations of a name, or you could even imagine even further, right? Going to the example that I gave about different epistemic traditions, that in fact these different repositories are talking about the same thing. So this can help to bridge the gap between isolated data silos, allowing information from archives, libraries, museums, and expert curated data sets to kind of work more effectively together. And this link can then power robust search in institutional repositories as well, that can help to eliminate false negative search results. So we've probably all had the experience of having gone to a repository searching for the particular a particular spelling of a site name, and you spelled it differently than the cataloger put in, and so you're returning a false negative. This is something that we encounter as Western European language speakers all the time. Imagine the barrier that this causes for, say, an Arabic-speaking audience, where not a lot of this kind of language mapping has been done in order to make sites discoverable according to Arabic transliterations. I should say that what I'm talking about here in terms of geospatial data also applies to person names. So I've also given you another example of two different photographs, two different repositories. They actually both depict the same person, but there are various spellings of Michael Rostovtsev's name. And so if these two different photographs are both pointing to a record that helps to collect up all the different possible spellings of his name, then you're building in the searchability according to lots of those different formulations. So in the world of cultural heritage, the key intersection points where data sets frequently align include people. So often we have artists or authors or historical figures. So these can be modern people or ancient people, as we're talking about ancient Mediterranean data in the context of this course. Places are another frequent intersection point. So these are geographic locations and archaeological sites. The things, so both physical artifacts and, as I said, archival documents, and events can be historical moments. They can be periods of cultural occupation at a particular site, a particular earthquake or event that is significant to a site. Or you could also think of exhibitions or excavation seasons as events. And then, of course, bibliography, scholarly citations, and print and digital resources. So at this state in the development of cultural heritage linked open data, key foundational data pertaining to these different intersection points tends to be managed by a class of resources that we often call authorities. So gazetteers are an authority type that tends to manage disambiguation of information related to place. Pleiades is a long-standing digital gazetteer that serves this purpose for ancient Mediterranean sites. While others like World Historical Gazetteer and GeoNames are less specific to that particular context, but serve a similar kind of function. Periodo and Chronotology are examples of chronological gazetteers that serve the same function for disambiguation of events and time periods. Entities like the VIAF, the Virtual Identity Authority File, and digital prosopographies serve this function for disambiguating among people with the same name or lots of variant spellings for their names, as I just demonstrated with Michael Rostovtsev. Thesauri tend to disambiguate between terms used to describe concepts like processes of fabrication or classificatory fields. So think here about how painting is both a fabrication process and is a kind of physical thing that is the result of that process. And so a thesaurus would help to differentiate and disambiguate between those two different meanings. Or you could think of, say, what we in English call a loom weight. That is part of the kit that is used in weaving. That's known by different equivalent terms in other languages or even different spellings in English. And so a thesaurus would help to manage that. All right. So how does this all then pertain to the Wikimedia ecosystem that we'll be digging into further? So first, I think it's important to understand that there is a parent movement known as the Wikimedia movement. And that parent entity then sponsors separate but related projects. And these include Wikipedia. This is probably the one that most people are familiar with. And Wikipedia is narrative, encyclopedia style entries with hyperlinks between articles. The info boxes that show up on the side, the right-hand side of Wikipedia articles, I've given you an example here of Barack Obama. The info boxes are actually supplied by something known as Wikidata, and the images can be drawn from Wikimedia Commons. So those are the other two parts of the ecosystem. There are other projects under the Wiki umbrella, but Wikidata and Wiki Commons are the two that we'll talk most about today and that I'll really dig into. So Wikidata is the primary linked open data project under the Wikimedia aegis. This is where you can make lots of those granular links between people, places, and things. It's essentially a kind of microcosm of the larger linked open data ecosystem, where different kinds of authorities manage different classes of data. So one of the things that our team has found really useful about Wikidata is that it becomes kind of this freely hosted, sticky, multilingual place where we can crosswalk between lots of fragmented information. Then Wikimedia Commons, you can think of this as the multimedia repository of the wiki ecosystem. While most people will think of it as a place where image files are deposited, it certainly does that, but it can also do audio and video and PDFs and geodata. And Emily will show you a little bit of how we're using the geodata functions in particular. Multimedia that is stored in Commons is easy to bring into other wiki projects like Wikipedia and Wikidata. So when you see images on some of our upcoming Wikidata slides, those images are actually being brought over from or linked from the Wikicommons media repository. And as I said, the information that is structured in these linked open data kernels in Wikidata can actually power the info boxes on the Wikipedia article associated. But there are other ways that we can use Wikidata as well. So I hope it's already starting to dawn how linked open data processes or approaches can be useful for easing some of the frictions that plague the current online ecosystem by helping to bridge data silos between languages, institutions, and disciplines to allow contextually related data to work better together. But Emily and I represent the IDEA project, and this project is trying to take this a step further by beginning to intentionally use linked open data methods to mitigate some of the inequities that are left in the wake of blockbuster early archaeology. So our work centers the site of Dura Europos, and that's one of Syria's most significant cultural heritage sites. But Dura is emblematic of a much bigger type. So what I'll say about Dura, you can think about in kind of broader contexts as well of similar analogous sites. So for sites like Dura, thanks to mandate era partage of artifacts, trades among peer institutions, archival collections that are tied to individuals. You've got differently sponsored excavation campaigns and 100 years of scholarship that spans different disciplines and that straddles the analog and digital divide. You've got an information landscape tied to this site and sites like it that is vast, but because of this history, it is predominantly shaped by voices from the global north. It's really only accessible to folks who are Western European language speakers and that really know how to navigate all these different fragmented resources. And so this is marked by institutional, linguistic, and disciplinary knowledge silos that are a challenge for us researchers, let alone global interested publics. So over the last decade, institutions and researchers have rushed to kind of seize the power of the digital to expand access to collections, both artifacts and archival documents, that many of us have felt firsthand the benefits of this through the COVID pandemic or to continue work related to modern landscapes that are inaccessible due to conflict. But pioneering digitization efforts have also taught us lessons related to digital colonialism and coloniality of knowledge. So digitization of collections related to archaeology's problematic past too often proceeds in ways that uncritically re-encode multilingual Eurocentric metadata, reinforcing old patterns of exclusion and authoritatively asserting kind of what is worth knowing. We're essentially in structuring metadata for these collections, we are determining how you have to search for them. And I'll show you an example of this. So for instance, the metadata on an archival photograph like this one, there's no mention in the traditional institutional record for the smiling man who's holding up a small sculptural find. This is based on analog records that have then been pushed forward without revision from a digital phase to a next digital phase. And essentially, we don't know what we don't know. A photograph like this has been cataloged and cultivated really only from an institutional standpoint and only from, say, an explicitly archaeological standpoint. Records like this are ubiquitous for early archaeology. They kind of look past the human and participate in a continued erasure of local contributions that made possible these kind of big digs that are still so foundational to archaeology and related humanities disciplines. So it's important to recognize, too, that monolingual metadata and place name traditions that we choose to catalog according to shapes who can easily surface information, even if it's open and available online. So, for example, even though we've known since the 1930s that locals have called Dura's main gate Bab al-Hawa, that naming tradition isn't typically cataloged or repeated in the online cataloging, and so that tradition for surfacing an image like this is not possible. So since there's this burgeoning ecosystem of digital collections and databases and publications and other resources pertinent to a site like Dura that's already online but unintegrated, our team uses the Wikidata environment to build a network of relationships across the fragmented information landscape. So since Wikidata has a lower technical barrier and is fully multilingual, including multilingual tools and a support community, it's provided a means to kind of consolidate a fragmented information landscape, pass that information across language barriers, and then use the results of that work to develop a broader base of heritage professionals with whom to collaborate on more sensitively reshaping the digital footprint related to this archaeological site. The knowledge graph that we're building in Wikidata essentially provides digital recontextualization for archival documents, artifacts, and buildings dispersed into different collections and documented in standalone databases. But what's more, because this web of relationships is based on language agnostic codes with different language labels mapped to them, the whole web of data related to the site is fully readable and navigable in Arabic. So when one of our team members makes an edit in English, it's immediately legible in Arabic. And when one of our Syrian collaborators edits in Arabic, it's available in English as well. So we're working together then as a multilingual group of globally situated professionals with different areas of disciplinary expertise to map this complex network of relationships among entities related to Dura, and to add new metadata statements to records like this one to diversify the range of perspectives and alternate knowledge systems brought to bear and digitally attested in connection with such a record. So in the case of our sample photograph, we've used the image positions tool that I've highlighted here that's built into Wikidata to add metadata with depict statements. So these tripartite kernels of data. This one is saying this thing depicts specific entities, to acknowledge the presence of a site worker in the photograph, to connect up information about inscriptions that are scratched into the wall in the background, even connect up the particular artifact that he happens to be holding. And while I'm showing you the labels in English, the annotations you see are powered by a language agnostic code, those URIs associated with the relevant concepts. So the labels could be toggled to Arabic or any other language. So we've worked with our Syrian heritage professional colleagues to develop annotation enrichments related to local clothing traditions as a means to deepen their fluency with linked open data methods. And they've been learning this in the course of our collaborative work. And then next month, they'll be conducting new oral histories with members of the descendant community in the hopes to learn more about the people who are actually depicted in the excavation photographs. So this offers an important decolonial advantage of kind of networking these additional perspectives alongside the records and perspectives generated by foreign excavation campaigns. So this isn't something that sits apart. It's something that is integrated alongside. Ultimately, we're leveraging this collaboratively shaped data set both to power a lightweight digital application for browsing information about Dura in English and Arabic. And this is what I'm showing you briefly in the demo video. But it's also a hands-on learning space to kind of begin developing the professional networks that can inform a more equitable digital future. The Dura Europa Stories interface is fully powered by the corner of Wikidata that our team is cultivating. This is just one web application built to interact with the data set that we've created, but the data could be framed in other ways for other needs or as newer technologies inevitably outstrip the old. And I'll pass it over to Emily, who'll demonstrate in a little bit of more granularity the kinds of links that our team is making in Wikidata toward the ends of recontextualization.
Thanks, Anne. Yes, handing over to Emily.
Hi, my name is Emily Helm. I'm a PhD candidate in Yale's Classics department, although I'm currently based in Washington, D.C. I'm a co-assistant director for the IDEA project. I've been part of the IDEA project for over 3 years. It is my first foray into digital humanities, and so I didn't really know anything when I started, but I've been able to learn a lot. So anyway, I wanted to talk about some of these links that are possible in Wikidata. So first off, in this slide, we wanted to highlight the fact that Wikidata allows for multiple values for many statements. So you see that this is a depict statement, and some of these values are contradictory, right? So saying that these women represent the three Marys who arrived at Jesus's tomb on Easter morning, and saying that they represent the parable of the 10 virgins, probably, it wouldn't be intended by the frescoes artist or the commissioners of this work for them to mean both of those things. But current scholarship hasn't really settled on one. So we just put both values and then we reference them so that people can follow those references and, sort of make decisions for themselves or just see where the scholarship currently is. But since there isn't a consensus, we've displayed them neutrally. So you see there's a little black box there's an up, a down arrow, and then like a middle circle. The middle circle is filled in because these are, it's presented neutrally. So if we wanted to say that current scholarship suggested that it's actually the three Marys, then the up arrow would be filled and the value would be highlighted in green. If we wanted to say that current scholarship says it's not the three Marys, but we still wanted to offer this as a value in case people wanted to know what people used to think, then we would have the down arrow highlighted and the value highlighted in red. And we'll see an example of this later. Here you can see a knowledge web of the connections in Wikidata for a specific room in a specific house at Dura Europos, and this room 6 for house M7W, is kind of our example for this, the last part of the presentation. Some of these connections are to specific things, archival documents or events, and some of them are to concepts, general concepts. So like the concept of a room or of ruins. And then on the other image is the web in Arabic, and the interface is also in Arabic, just to show that it can be, it's multilingual. So, sorry, having a problem with my notes. Okay, so this fresco it's been broken up. It was a banquet and a hunting fresco originally together, as you can see in this archival photo. Part of it has gone to the Yale University Art Gallery and part to the Louvre. Now, as you can see, the catalog entries for both institutions on their websites just show their own individual pieces. And if you look at the entries, the UAG's entry does not say anything about the hunting scene, and the Louvre says that there is a banquet scene, but it says that it's left in situ in Dura Europos. Now, there are very important inscriptions, because all of these inscriptions are important and interesting, but these museum website catalogs just mention them kind of in passing, say maybe what language they're in and the genre, but they don't give this transcription. So you can see this is, we've given the transcription for the Aramaic for one of these inscriptions. And they don't, sorry. Using Wikidata, we can join these two items back together. We can connect them to archival photographs and documents showing them. We can put them back into their original geographic context, and we can show the pictures of this context and geoshapes of the context. Okay, so how do we connect an item and the archival depictions of this item? So for this hunting scene wall plaster, we can look at the items that are depicted by this. So we've already made these connections, and then we can click on those items and see the Wikimedia Commons files of these pictures. It's pretty straightforward. Connecting the location, the original locations and the items can sometimes take a few more steps. So for example, this the hunting scene wall plaster item has a location of discovery statement with, again, multiple values. Because one value is more specific, we have given it preferred rank, as you can see, and a qualifier for the reason for the preferred rank, which is that it's more specific. So then if you click for room 6, house M7W, it takes you to the item for the room itself. And then you can see that there is a statement connecting the room to the house. So it's part of that house. And then statements on the multiple statements on the item for house M7W contain geographic information, such as the country that it is in. But the most interesting statements for our purposes are the coordinate location, the geo shape with a file from uploaded into Wikimedia Commons, and the Pleiades ID. So here you can see the GeoShape file, which one of our talented team members has drawn for this house. And then you can also, if you clicked on the ID number for the Pleiades ID statement, it would take you to the record for this house. And then you could see the exact pinpoint of the house in an image of the whole Dura Europos site. So we have a Pleiades record for this house. We could also have a record for the room itself, but we don't currently. So this image shows some of the interesting things that we can do with this geo information. So this map, it's just a query result for a very simple query to say, where are the current locations for items that were from the Dura Europos site? And then it has a really clear visualization. These are two maps of Dura Europos. One is both showing query results. One of them shows the location of discovery for all of the papyri and parchment fragments found in the Yale French excavations. And the other shows all of the locations of discovery for artifacts from Dura. So even though there aren't all that many dots there, as you can see, there are over 16,000 Wikidata items represented there. And this can give you some very interesting information. So the artifacts seems to show where the excavations happened, but the papyri seems to show just where people left the papyri, which is, it's interesting how localized that is. Some people use a wiki base that's personal and private, so they can use it to Wikidata, but it doesn't. They don't rely on properties or values that other people use, and that their information is much more internal. But by using this open Wikidata ecosystem, our information can play with other people's information. So you have results for queries for Roman triumphal arches, and you can see the Dura Europos arch, and then also the same for the Roman amphitheaters, and you see the Dura Europos one. So we think that it's important for our project to interact with other projects that are working at the same time, or we're working in the past, or will be working in the future. Anne already mentioned the example of the multiple names for the Palmyran Gate. Something that we wanted to mention quickly was that the Pleiades repository only uses a couple of those names. So then this sort of leads to the question of, obviously these authority repositories act as anchors for Wikidata, but in what way should it act the other way? So if there are improvements to Wikidata items, how could the authority records also be improved? We don't really have very much time, but we wanted to mention that one of the challenges of modeling space has been that spaces change over time. There are multiple ways that we can talk about time in Wikidata. So there's a lot of text here. We can talk about this more in the discussion, or people can get into contact with us. That was all we had. Anne, I don't know if you want to add anything quickly.
No, I think you did a great job, Emily. Thank you.
Sorry, my notes just disappeared, so I spoke more on the cuff than I was expecting.
Great, thanks very much, Emily. Okay, so we'll hand over next to Sebastian, who's going to now pivot to talk about a different project, which he'll introduce as he introduces himself. So over to you, Sebastian.
Excellent. I can only see my screen, but perhaps it's the case that people can see me as well as I introduce myself. I'm Sebastian Heath, coming to you from New York City, but institutionally coming to you from the Institute for the Study of the Ancient World at New York University, where I am Clinical Associate Professor of Roman Archaeology and Computational Humanities. So experimental humanities, digital humanities, computational humanities, variants on a theme of foregrounding human experience, perhaps. And Emily, I don't mean to speak for how you would define yourselves. I do, however, mean to thank you very much for the introduction that you gave us and the introduction that you gave to me in terms of how I will present my project. Hopefully on the fly, looking for ways of overlapping. Today, I will be talking about a digital project called Global Approaches to Early Representations of the Human Figure. Not in a defensive way, but in an actual way. I stress that I am early in creating this project. But in 2026 or 2025, when I really started it, early can mean registering a domain name, making a website, putting it up there, and sort of acting as if you're a full-blown player in a linked open data world, and that's a good thing. And so to the students, to anything, I say the barriers to entry into this world can be low. I don't mean to be naive and say there aren't technical barriers, but I think you'll be able to manifest that in the assignment that you do, and that's between you and Gabby a little bit. And then because there is an assignment and GERF is one option, in the few minutes that I have, I am going to try and stress what you can do, and or not so much stress, but to demonstrate, to manifest, to embody what it is that you can do, but virtually on screen as well. So what is GERF? In the short time that I have to make sure not to think that it speaks for itself, but there is a simple idea. We as humans, as a species, as a group, we have been making images of ourselves for a long time around the world. I won't get into too much of the chronology, but for a long time and around the world, we have been making images of ourselves. And can I help express that in digital form in a way that lets other people come and see that easily? And so on the surface of the screen, see it. And so speaking of surface of the screen, yes, I'm going to click through right now, and hopefully that's live. And Gabby, you'll shout if for some reason this is not working. But hearing no shouting, I will imagine it is. And the GERF interface can at one level be felt to be quite simple. It is a map with dots, and you click on that, and I'm clicking somewhat randomly. You click on those, and you see, again, depictions of ourselves, but also to say depictions of ourselves is sort of collapsing time. I want it to be the case that as you zoom in and you're sort of seeing individual records, that it is possible on this website to conceive of an object-oriented approach, a specific image-oriented approach, and I'll come up with one maybe with a slightly better image here, and I should have, with clicking around and seeing things, and that for the content, for the individual human figures, there's the possibility of a user-defined spatial and chronological scope for it, or being able to explore that. And so, yes, I'm zooming in, and you'll see that, and I hope there are not too many things covering windows for StreamYard and all that kind of stuff, that the gallery down here is the dots that are on the screen, and they are ordered chronologically, and I can click through and show them. I mean it to be direct and naive, but hopefully not so naive that it seems like ignoring, or I mean to be in context with the issues that Anne and Emily have raised, differently but overlapping. But yes, I would like it to be possible that GERF can be described as allowing the multiple stories that exist in art history to come to be accessible to many people. And so that isn't because you can see some of the records right now are extremely sparse, however you want to call it. And so any individual record right now on what you're seeing on the screen may not have complete information. I'll right click here and say, clicking onto Wikipedia and allowing to find more, but that is the project at the beginning of allowing there to be on screen, and therefore the exploration of multiple voices within the very, very long-term art history of our globe, such that many people are included. I would like it to be the case that basically anybody here can come to this site and see themselves. That's grand happy talk, and I don't pretend I'm completely there, but that's a brief introduction to what it is I am up to. So yes, as a digital humanities talk, to bring everyone into the process and that, by which content is expressed, and I'll make that very hands-on. I will show you what I do, and because students can choose to do that. As an art history archaeology talk, an environment for exploring multiple narratives with a global approach, and then the intersection of these two approaches here today. I hope I have raised issues. I will lean into the technology, the computational humanities part of what I do, So I've allowed myself sort of seeing what was going to work and all that kind of stuff. So do I need to click through on any of these things? I will, just to return us to the site itself, and to offer a few thoughts on how it is people can define their own groups of things like that, explore their own things, all at the beginning, in part because I am going to go under the hood and show you how the data is collected, and there may seem to be a bit of a disjunction there. Underlying GERF are very, very simple records. Can one compile enough of those to make an interesting environment to explore the issues that I've raised? Not quite yet, but maybe. And I don't mean to that defensively, like sort of vaporware, or I'm going to do this. It's all on the internet. You can go and do it. Please go in and explore my data. And if you'd like to send me an email with comments on it, I welcome that. So I can hover over here and get a slightly bigger version of this. I happen to be in Romania in 5000 BCE, where people are creating compelling images of themselves It has sometimes been thought that this figure over here should be called thinker like Rodin. I leave that in this very short introduction. I leave that completely up to you to think about how it is that we look at past human figures and consider for ourselves what it means that those people were thinking or doing and the relationships between them. That's not necessarily today's goal, but I hope it's all right that I can say that be inspired to think about that and to find complexity around the globe in many past cultures. Okay, probably repeating myself a little there. We can come up and I can type in, here's a sort of cheap one, gold, and highlight here, and you're seeing gold used around here, around the world, and I could then go down and click on these things, or jade, and cover over there, and then I can, if I click on it, it'll restrict the whatever. I can moving around to the different jade ones, and so time and space and material, the content being brought together, allowing you to bring those together into groups to explore things. Okay, Gabby, I am going to go past the hour, into the hour and a half. At some point, you'll communicate to me that I should stop, but I also will try to bring myself to a stop as well. But yes, I hope it's not entirely uninteresting to click around and again see a tiny minuscule selection of the images we've been making of ourselves for a long time, to get the idea that we've been doing that, and that's an interesting way to approach a global history. Okay. Yeah, I am gonna take us into the nitty-gritty of how one takes sparse, efficient representations and can use those to create what hopefully is on the way to being a compelling environment for exploring everything that I claimed I want to let you explore. So on the screen here, we have a screenshot of what is called a TTL file or turtle file. I am now going to go to, and that is on the internet. I won't click on that link there, but it is all on the internet, and students can download it from the GitHub repository. Whether it's a mistake or not, Gabby, you'll tell me, and we can go back and I can show the step earlier. But I am making this bigger, and I'm at the point where I have brought onto my machine the GitHub repository, and I can edit it. Obviously, I've been at that point for a long time. The students are going to get themselves there by forking and downloading the repository, or however exactly you do it. I can type code, which is going to open up VS Code, a text editor, with that file. So I am going to briefly show over here, gerf.ttl. This is the entirety of the data that is that you've seen rendered onto a website. I will keep going. I will keep going forward. I'm now going to hide this, and so yeah, this is a live text file. I said it was a turtle file. That will have meant practically nothing to you. It is a representation of subject, predicates, and objects as discussed by Anne and Emily. A way of doing that such that the data is human readable and computationally actionable. Tripartite kernels, and I think you said that. That sequence of words have never come out of my mouth before, but I noted tripartite kernels of information. I will now start to describe triples in that way. So thank you for introducing that vocabulary to me. But yes, triples, subject, what you are talking about, predicate, the nature of the information that you're saying about it, and then object, the value that statement has. And so I am speaking about a vase, perhaps a little bit of random scrolling or exactly where I was. I'm speaking about a vase that has, since it has more than one human figure on it, I call it a group of human figures. So cooler vase, an identifier, a group of human figures. And so subject, predicate, object, RDFS label, a human readable label in which I'm using an existing vocabulary. Described by is saying this subject, cooler vase, has the predicate described by, which has the objects, these things, these web addresses, and I can click through and I'm into the British Museum. I will go back out. I will very quickly, Gareth, Kulu, there it is, highlight it, and that's how this information is being translated on screen. I haven't entered sort of more text for it. You're seeing things in process. This is the real world. Impossible to completely script myself in terms of where I go. But yes, this very simple representation turns into a simple representation on screen, but I hope it is interesting because it is in a spatial, and I need to highlight that and hit return. It is in a spatial and chronological context, a fancy word for the website that you're seeing, fancy words for the website that you're seeing right now. Okay, so yourself with this in front of you, you want to add a record, and again, Gabby, I'll try to be efficient, but do this in front of you, and there's going to be some mumbling and confusion and all that kind of stuff. So we have been at Dura Europos in the prior talk. There, very enjoyable, and so yes, there is a really quite well-known object from here, which is a fresco wall painting of a scene of sacrifice, a Roman army official sacrificing in front of a wide variety of people and gods. And it's this fascinating and important piece that I have wanted to get into Gear for a long time. So let's do it. Let's actually do it. Okay, AD 239, and that it's from Dura Europos. Great. I will, oh my God, you're seeing the sort of multiverse there. I didn't quite mean to click there. Where do I want to be? I want to be here. So I'm going to scroll along. I'm going to search for this. I don't mean to be too. This is my fast way of finding. Like I said, a little mumbling, flummoxing around. You're seeing the rawness of it. Yes. So here we are. We're in the list in the TTL file, the plain text, human readable, and computational readable file. They happen to be mostly ordered chronologically. That's arbitrary. And I've made some, every once in a while, things drift. But yeah, just I'm going to do this quickly. But so I'll come back and clean up after myself here. I am going to go, where are we? I've got too many windows up. Of course, this is the horror. Julius Terentius performing sacrifice. I'm going to turn that into an identifier. Julius Terentius sacrifice Dura. A little long. A group of human figures. Great. Okay. RDFS label. And for better or for worse, I am just going to take this and put it in here. Again, I might edit that or something like that. There aren't too many standards, but I want it to be a little bit described by. And then I will now link to here. This is an opportunity for me to talk a little bit about the syntax. Julius Terentius, the subject, and I say it's a human figure, but I'm not done saying things about it. So I use a semicolon and then can use another predicate and what that value has, semicolon, another predicate, what that value has. And I'm coming down here and I'm going to say approximate date, end date, start date, approximate date. I happen to have one, 239, just a simple number. And then I'll skip them things and I'll put note and come here and take enough. I'm gonna raise an issue, like enough from Yale Gallery website. Boom, boom. Okay, and it's always going to take longer, even if I'm going quickly. Oh look, I'm missing a semicolon. In modern country note, I need to change that from in modern country note to associated with modern country note and put in Syria. But for now, it's called in modern. I mean to be not where it is in the gallery, but to the extent that people might want to approach GERF by typing in the keyword Syria to see what's there. It's just a brute force indication of a very preliminary geographic indication. Then representative long point, it needs to be in there. And then, yeah, I just go to Europus, and I'm sure this is taking longer than I thought. My apologies. Here, boom, grab the decimal version, stick it in here, hit return, and then Wikimedia Commons image page. Okay, you'll see. I got too many windows up. I get it. My apologies. That there and the Yale Gallery has an image. I'd rather use the Wikimedia Commons image because I know that it's copyright clean. And somebody can ask me to go into that in more detail, but I am aware that we're well past what is noon here and the first hour of the session. Julius Terentius Wikimedia Commons, and yeah, here it is. I stick in that page, that link. I don't think I have made any mistakes, but it's always good to test. And so this is going to take a little longer. Oh, and I closed a window that I hadn't meant to. Source then bin activate. Whoops. Can't type. And that's too small for people to see. Let me make that bigger. But you don't actually have to do this. We're deep in how I have my machine set up. I'm going to bring this over. For the students, you'll send me data, and this is what I will do to make it live. But I want to give you a sense that things are going to happen. And also just like down in the plumbing of what is digital humanities. A mistake or not. I now have running on my machine a version of GERF. Again, students, you don't need to do this. And it's on a local host, and I'm just super quickly going to git commit am large star.png, things students need to do. I will do this for you if you do send a pull request commit. Whoops. Git commit. Sorry. I want you to see the the messiness. Okay, wait a minute, reload Gerf, and it will, it's not there yet, but give GitHub a chance to catch up with me, which I think can be a theme in terms of catching up. I did truly want to take the students through what they may be choosing to do. But yes, a theme is simple statements, tripartite kernels of information, and if I'm channeling you correctly, tripartite kernels of information, enough of those, collecting them, whether it's in Wikidata or in my TTL file, can create environments which are rich. Am I there yet? I don't know. Idea is, Wikidata is, am I there yet? I do not know, but can get us on a road to creating rich environments that can be presented in different forms. Take my file and make your own thing here, and you will see Anne and Emily showing the Wikidata interface, but also their ad hoc environment for exploring that, drawing Wikidata. I'm a very loose indication of the possibilities of that. And yes, if I just click through here, we'll get into it. Again, these are preliminary things, and a random one. We'll get into the fact that Gerf exists within an information environment and is an assembler of information, making discrete, computationally actionable statements about that, yeah, perhaps speak to big issues of global antiquity and multiple stories, and us all having been looking at ourselves for a long time, and can I make that easy to explore? So I will stop now. We're at 12:12 here, and whatever time wherever people are. Really welcome my colleagues or the audience saying, Sebastian, you just went too quickly. Can you do it again? And that repetition may help more subtly bring out some of the issues I have been trying to raise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian. That was fabulous. And just for the record, you started 10 minutes after we originally said you would, and you ended exactly 10 minutes after we said, so you kept perfectly to time.
Perfect.
So everything's great. Yeah, no, I think that was great. I think so. I'm just very quickly, anyone, because I know people on YouTube are running a few seconds behind us. So I'll say now, if you have any questions or comments, please do post them in the chat, and we'll pick them up as soon as we see them. On the subject of the exercise, the Sunoikis session page, which if you've come to this session directly from YouTube, there's a link to it in the description. If you expand the description beneath the video, you'll find a link to the Sunoikis session page. And at the bottom of that, there are two exercises described. The first is the one that Sebastian was just showing, and there's a bit more detail about how you might go about editing that turtle file that we just saw. And the second exercise is a link out to a longer document that Anne and Emily have prepared on editing this sort of information in Wikidata directly. And there's some examples of things you can do, and lots of things in there. I think those are both really excellent exercises. Most people in the world watching this, please feel free to choose either or both of those to try out. I strongly recommend you try out at least one, because it really helps to understand what's going on to be doing some of this by hand. For my students, who are only a small percentage of the people watching this anywhere in the world, the first of those exercises to create at least one, as many as you like, a new entry for Gerf, and send a pull request to Sebastian to incorporate it into the original dataset is the obligatory one. We will all try that out at least once between now and our next session, and whatever. The second exercise is also really interesting. So give that a go too if you have time, or feel free to try it later in the semester as we go. And we can always talk about it more then. But But yeah, this is super exciting. I'm really excited by both of these things. You know, I wish we had. You know, we could spend a semester just doing what we've done today, right? And we'd have a whole course based on that. This is great. Yeah, someone else talk.
I had a question for you, Sebastian, if it's okay if I jump in. I feel like you made the turtle so accessible, and thank you for walking us through that. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about why you chose not to pull from Wikidata directly, and is there a way, well, I imagine that there must be a way computationally that you could essentially have kind of structured data that is in a system like Wikidata that could be kind of computationally crosswalked into those fields that you're collecting for GERF. And as I understand it, you're doing all of this manually, at least at this stage. And I wondered if there's any value to encouraging folks to actually structure data in the open knowledge base, and then, you know, for GERF to be pulling directly from that.
I think I'll address this. Three parts. I'd like to make it 3 parts because we're on the theme of 3 today. But maybe 2 parts. So I'm at one of the sort of spare pages, and I'll get around to adding more in and whatever, all that kind of stuff. XXX. Allow me to say that many times, but you'll get bored of hearing it. There is an element of at this stage of the project that it is truly easier for me to paste in the English language Wikipedia page and then directly reflect that in there as an indication of you know, where I want to go, or of a surface. But you are absolutely correct. And this is to students. There is no individual Wikipedia page for this object. And we'll note, everyone will note, one could make a Wikidata page for it. Absolutely. And it probably ought to have that. You're there.
I've actually already dropped it into the chat here, Sebastian.
Oh, okay. Oh, there is one. Okay, great. And so absolutely, I should be linking to that. I think what and then programmatically. And I don't think I'm saying anything that isn't entirely feasible. Programmatically, in the Wikidata, can I go to the chat and people are seeing? Okay, great. So Julius Sorrento. Okay, great. Julius, it is like that low-hanging fruit right now. Absolutely, I will link to that. And then in a future world, on the basis of coding, I think I'll be able to scroll down here and find relevant wiki pages or whatever, all kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Yes, parse this. I will say that as a matter, and for the students, for everybody, this is student part, I will keep this here. I'm not sure. Sorry. My screen's no longer being shared. I maybe did things, whatever. I wasn't assuming my screen is shared, but as we know, whatever, all these kinds of things happen.
We are looking at your screen, Sebastian.
Now you can still see my screen. Great. For better or for worse. I will keep this here, and I'll use the word, a technical word, but it's not that technical. Think of that as caching the information so that when I'm generating the website, I can do it extremely quickly. I think you saw how quickly it comes together. And so imagine right now there are about 600 records, items, however you want to call it, in GERF, out of human figures up to 1,500. I didn't quite get around to saying that. It's up to 1,500 CE, from 50,000 CE to 1,500 CE, 50,000 BCE to 1,500 CE. Potentially millions, abstractly, millions and millions of images, especially if you start counting individual coins. But realistically, is GERF going to get to 10,000, 20,000 records? I hope so. I put in a grant request for money to get me on that way. And so I wouldn't want to, every time I compile the website, to re-access the Wikidata and slow down. But and you're complete. I mean, I'll do that right now. Oh gosh, let's for the very first time sort of adapting flexibility, and I'm trying to get to window. Oh, you can see my screen, but I can no longer find the chat here. I'd love to stick in. Oh no, here it is. I don't need it. I was looking for the chat, but then I've got the thing right here. Two ways I can do this, and I don't know if this is interesting. I just as a placeholder, I can go like that, and the next time I compile the site and put it up there, this link will be there. But what I should do is, and without being too technical for the students, and that's you'll get that's frustrating. I mean, to keep saying that. I should define a more strongly typed predicate, strongly typed. That is where I'm really saying what it is. And so, yes, I am going to do that. The glory of a sort of text-based approach to, so I'm going to put Wikidata URI and there. And for the very first time in the history of the universe, GERF now includes a wiki. And look, it's been nice if I could type it correctly, right? Wikidata URI. Now, it is the case that I will load that, and this will not show because the website currently doesn't know about this predicate, but trivial. Oh, I am too interested. Trivial to show you the JavaScript code. Almost all of it has been written by vibe coding with LLMs. And I'll go to whatever. I could do it right now, except I completely mess up and embarrass myself, all that kind of stuff. But it will not be hard that the next time one goes there, it says Wikidata. And then it will not be hard at some future point to pull in, relevant language things or that is a link. And to the students, everybody there, everybody, like, is my project linked to open data? It overlaps with some of the techniques of linked open data. It certainly wants to participate in the goals, which is if I make that link to Wikidata, it's worthwhile doing it in one of the goals, it's worthwhile doing that both because somebody can click through and because, as Anne suggests, I can bring onto the screen information that I haven't had to collect. Like, let's go down here. There's a whole lot of stuff around here that I'd love to show in GERF. Inefficient for me to collect it all, but I don't have to because I can bring the Wikidata information in. And was that both aspects of the question?
Yeah, I think I was specifically thinking more that that there seem to be equivalencies between the fields that you're gathering for GERF and fields that exist in Wikidata. And I could imagine a pipeline where, say, we've already done the work to track down, where the authority link is and what the date is and, other descriptive fields that you're putting into your turtle. So I guess I was wondering whether part of your pipeline could be, encouraging folks to populate a Wikidata record, and that you could write code that essentially, pulls in those fields to populate GERF, and so it's maybe more fully participating in the linked data movement, or encouraging folks with a wider range of experience and backgrounds to be populating the knowledge base.
I will, and I'm really glad for a conversation like this, sort of as a project, and you say more fully participating in. How to sort of not redirect or not push back. There are multiple ways of participating in linked open data. And one of the background principles of linked open data is that anybody can say anything about anything. And so I don't mean to hold that up as a defense, but yes, I suspect that the GERF TTL file is going to repeat information that could be found elsewhere because it is bringing it into its own efficiently computational, actionable form to transform it in the way that GERF wants to. But by linking to other ones, it's not claiming to be a definitive or exclusive representation. It's just it's fully participating in linked open data by being an equal participant and doing its thing. So I wouldn't want to hand over Wikidata a gatekeeping effect and saying you're not a full linked open data if you don't use Wikidata. And you weren't quite saying that.
Yeah.
This is I'm sort of leaning into the opportunity for conversation. But I hope I did that
I'm sorry. I think that my choice of words perhaps derailed things. I don't mean that you are not participating fully. I guess I mean more that you can open up the participatory window for who could be populating GERF or contributing records in this way, where I could imagine that, say, an editor who is comfortable working exclusively in Arabic could be populating a record in Wikidata in a way that then translates or allows that information to be legible and discoverable in English, that then it can be pulled into GERF, if that makes sense.
No, completely. And there's to get to the hundreds of thousands of records and full exploration of the record of we having been making images of ourselves for a long time, those patterns and workflows and information flows may well come into existence. I want to make sure not to be like, oh yes, I look forward to doing that, because that sort of overlaps with vaporware. And thank you so much for thinking that somebody working in Wikidata, or that anybody might want to have information showing up in GERF, all that kind of stuff. So yes, I'm sure it will take a long time. And so that's where sort of allowing a conversation to be real and not just say yes, but to also keep the balance of multiple places on the internet where people are working with forms of information and trying to find the ways of overlap and taking advantage and working together, but allowing there to be multiple voices. And so yeah, Anne, are we iterating towards a vision that can happen and works, or something like that? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be ideal. It just seems that that maybe there could be multiple ways into GERF, I guess, is
yeah. I mean, absolutely. And also, like, as a workflow for me, like, stick in the Wikidata and lots of things happen in here, a tag in here, and stick it in, and then that pre-populates and links to it and says that that's where it came from, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also think it's very cool that there are multiple ways of doing this sort of thing, and there will be some duplication between them. But there will also be movement between them in various structures. So a lot of information we've already seen can come from Wikidata. Some of this information might go back to Wikidata. There may be pathways for that in the future. There are slightly different selection criteria, as you alluded to, Sebastian. There also are potentially things that you can do in GERF that you couldn't do in Wikidata, such as copy pasting a bunch of Creative Commons licensed text from a third-party source into your thing. You can't do that into Wikidata because it has to be CC0 licensed. So that's actually something that you couldn't do if it was all coming from Wikidata. So various things that can be done, in different ways and alongside one another. And you might decide one day you want to port all of this data to Wikidata and no longer have that turtle file, and you can do, because this is all linked data and it's all easy to make those sort of programmatical changes. But you also may not do, and I think it's I don't think there's any sort of conflict. We're all thinking about the potentials of what we're doing and how we do it. I mean, whenever I look at this, I mean, it's just for a ridiculous example. Whenever I look at this, I think about how we could do this if we were doing this in TIXML rather than in Turtle, right? Which is just silly. That's just because that's the technology I know better than I do IDF. And I think we're all looking at this in these sorts of ways and thinking about the possibilities and potentials. And I think that's one of the exciting things about this, looking at all of our different projects and how we're doing them. So yeah, this is super cool. And having these conversations exactly as we're seeing is also super cool. Does anyone else who's not been speaking since the end of the thing want to jump in before I say a last couple of things about the exercise? Emily, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to, Sebastian, I wanted to ask you this question since I first saw your project. So it's, human figures. So I'm curious about like what counts as a human figure. I mean, there's some things that, there's just like a kind of very curvy statuette of a woman. And then people are like, oh, it's a goddess or whatever. There's nothing to like mark that necessarily. People just like things being ritualized. Or there might be some things where it probably is a deity, but it looks human. Or maybe it's sort of modeled on a human part way, but modeled on a fish the other way, like a mermaid or whatever. So what do you count as what would be considered human figure for the purposes of your project?
It's a super question, and I don't. It's not a question that can be answered by saying here's a firm line. Fortunately, there are millions and millions of objects that are in the scope of that is clearly a human figure. I am willing to say I'm focused on form, so that it might be a deity as long as it's like human enough. That's completely fine and counts as the person making it had an idea that they were looking at, had over the course of their lives looked at humans and were making something that more or less looked human. But again, that's not. I want to be somewhat inclusive, but too much, zoomorphic human forms, and I'm not putting it in right now. Just because, and then I do. There are lots of just like votive hands. I don't happen to be including that, but I am including heads, that is faces. And so like coin portraits or just you go in there are lots of just heads in there. I think of that as sufficiently capturing enough of our humanity face. And we are, as humans, our brains are designed to see even, two vertical line, whatever that, and think face. And so it engages the idea that you're looking at an example of yourself, an instance of what you are by looking at a face. And so Emily, right now can be inclusive in terms of the number of things, but also, there are early figures that are really deep combinations of animal and human, and they don't happen to be in right now. One of that being. And Gabby, you'll bring the conversation to a close, and when it is time to. But this in open data or any database, the idea of a open world and closed world. Your bank account being a closed world because you want to know what the balance is and that there isn't some debit sitting out there that you and the bank don't know about, and there also isn't some $1 million check that magically is going to appear. So that's a database that is a closed world. It is the entire world. Linked open data, as we all know, not telling you not saying anything that people on the screen don't know. Linked open data can inherently be, manifesting the ideal of an open data, an open world in which because I don't say it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So on the screen are specific statements, but none of those are to say that this is the entire world of what GIF could be and or is. That's a simple way of saying, oh yeah, maybe I'll add it, or that would be fun, or whatever. But you can't. There isn't. One has to make. It also exposes that one is always making decisions. So Emily, I've taken your question a little bit, but both. I have found it satisfying that this project doesn't need to say, oh, I'm only doing it in the old world, or what is the old world? And across the Bering Strait, in Alaska, there are cultures that cross. I don't have to do that anywhere. And in terms of time, it happens to be 50,000 because that's some of our most confident date. But if somebody finds something from 100,000 BCE, and there are some people who said, hey, whatever, I'll go there. So there are ways in which I can say, is it included? Yes. But to your question, like, what is the limit? There are things that are so abstract that they shouldn't be. But I could take you, like in Japan, like there is abstract representations of human figures, but I truly think that all of us would look at them and go, oh yes, that's a human. And so loosely, how unacademic or unrigorous is me to say loosely that if my sense is that a whole lot of us would look at it and think, oh, that's one of us, it's game. And so to the students, what should you put in? If you look at it and you think, it's me or whatever it is, think about getting in, and it doesn't matter the medium. It doesn't matter. That's the other thing. Like, it's not sculpture. It's not this. It's anything. Human figures scrawled on potsherds. There are a few of them in there. That's not surprising. That's not surprising. I like pottery. There are ways in which, and Emily, this isn't quite to your question, but there are ways in which I've found it satisfying that I don't have to put any limit. Don't have to be selective. Can be inclusive, but of course. What is a human? What counts as a human figure? That's it. That is a question. Except I'm not saying that those things don't deserve representation somewhere in Wikidata and all over, and linking to it and all this kind of stuff, and saying what's a geographic query into Wikidata to find other things, other artworks from around here. Boom, go and do it. So waving my hands, getting excited, looking forward to the future, understanding a certain naivete and just keeping going forward, understanding that will lead to what I hope are substantive conversations about what a project like this can be and how it overlaps with other projects. Look forward to that.
Great. So very, very quickly, we have we're technically over time, but we always go over time. So Anna has a quick question, I think, and then I will draw a line under by making a final comment about the exercise. So go ahead, Anna.
Yes. Hi. Yes, my question is about a really big topic, actually. I'm generally interested in copyright, and I was wondering if you can talk more about, if you, Sebastian, can talk more about this issue. If you faced any difficulties with retrieving data from those resources that might have restricted licenses, or especially for images, or if they are probably all retrieved from Wikicommons or other resources. Thank you.
And that's again to me.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a super interesting issue. Gabby, is my screen still showing?
It can be.
Images.google.com, Iron Age figures from Anatolia. Oops, and I misspelled it, but I'm sure it will fix it for me. So, bluntly, and I do understand that there's a recording, and this is for ever onward. The words that I say will, are being recorded. I do note that a number of tools show you thumbnail images of thumbnail versions of images that are on the internet. And so in many ways, I ask my colleagues or put forward to students for a conversation, and that I can click here and it gets bigger. And so I do not want to say, if Google does it, it's okay. But nor do I want to say only Google gets to do it. And somewhere in the intersection of GERF generating thumbnail images, which none of us are lawyers, but we like to think that we have thought about some of these things. None of us are lawyers. A thumbnail image in a finding guide falls within the language of fair use. And so I have proceeded at this early stage as if I am under the rubric of fair use by way of being a finding guide for existing images on the internet. Obviously, for Wikimedia Commons, that's less of a concern. I'm using that as a filter for reusable, and I link to it, and I need to update the interface to show that all that la 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 la. But for other images that are more ambiguous about their status or this or that, to what extent can I operate as a finding guide that's sharing thumbnail images? So that's sort of trying to be efficient in my answer in the context of a conversation that will come to an end. It is more complicated than that. But Anna, this is one of those things where like, I'm not so naive as to be like, copyright, I don't care about it. I want to operate within the world. And if somebody sends me a thing saying, take it down, I'll just take it down. I don't care. Whatever. Fine. There are millions, there are tens of millions of humans of images. And if I have to lose one, I have to lose one. There it is. So, not adversarial to copyright, but making sure I am not frozen by it. That I'm, that I'm not frozen by it. So, and I'll take that hit. What's the worst? I don't know. Like, should I worry about it more? Maybe, but I don't. So there it is. That's my sort of like in the real world. Like you've seen editing total code with VS Code and missing things, and now you have like, this is how I go about with images. But there is obviously more subtlety. There's obviously more subtlety there. And should anybody want me to take down any of these images, gone. There it is. I'll go with it.
And obviously, if you were doing a different kind of project, you would have different answers and different decisions to make there. If your project was involving uploading your images to Wikimedia Commons, you would have to make sure you had the permission to do that for every single one you did. That would be, which is again another reason why having this sort of very sort of standalone project gives you that freedom to not have to worry about that. I think you are absolutely, right that this is fair use in parts of the world where fair use is defined that way. Obviously, that's not universal either.
Right, but yeah, super. Yeah, thank you, Gabby, or whatever. I'll quote you. As my lawyer told me.
And Anna Clara, just from our perspective, we've been careful to work specifically from material that is already fair. Where we have encountered material that there were not open license agreements, we have had a lot of success actually in just going to the institution and talking about why we want to do what we want to do. And I just want to give a shout out to Yale University Art Gallery has been extremely generous in working with us, and I think they're really a leader in showcasing how these kinds of partnerships can really open up new opportunities when we put institutions and researchers together. So
cool. So great. We really are over time. I will stop partly to spare the people who've been watching this for nearly 1 hour 45 minutes now, but also for the people who've had to be in the video for nearly 1 hour 45 minutes as well. The final point I just wanted to say is that the exercises that we have proposed, and in particular the GERF exercise, which I'm asking my students to attempt, which has quite a lot of elements, quite a lot of steps to it. So first you have to find an image and a description of that object somewhere and check that it's not already in there. Then you have to navigate how to create some turtle. You've seen that's fairly straightforward, and I think we've also given you very, very detailed breakdown of that in the description of the exercise on the page. Probably more detailed than you need, but it's for us an excess of caution. And then you have to navigate forking and cloning and pulling and committing and pushing and sending a pull request. All these sorts of elements there. Some people will find all of that very straightforward. Some people will struggle with one step or another of it. Or you might be in the middle of doing that and you think, I just have no way of knowing what to put under date. There doesn't seem to be any information about date anywhere that I've looked. Whatever, there may be all sorts of things that make this complicated. If you come up with any sort of difficulty, there is also a ticket, a GitHub issue that we've created. There's a link to it in the middle of the description of the exercise that you can click on. I have, without initially asking permission, I have assigned that issue to myself. I will keep an eye on it and attempt to answer questions if I can. I've also assigned it to Sebastian, I hope you don't mind, and also to Chiara on the grounds that possibly some of your students might also have questions about this. So if there are any questions, one or other of us will attempt to look at it for you. And also, if you are my students, you don't have to have finished this by next Tuesday when we next meet and have a look at it together. But so that's just an extra source of help and support with this. I'm sure there's similar options to sort of ask for help and feedback on the Wikidata exercise as well, which we can also put in there. But unless anyone wants to very quickly jump up and down with a last comment, I will sign off. I will say thank you all very much indeed. Thank you. Anne, Emily, and Sebastian, and thanks Chiara and Anna as well for being here. And see you all next week. And I don't have in front of me the next week we're talking about 3D modeling, and that'll be very exciting as well. Cool. Cheers all. Thanks.